Who's still with us, thankfully, from IG Markets. I don't think we've got more than a couple of sentences into your discussion on Bank of Japan, Chris. Just bring us up to date on, I think you're asking about the governor's term, Carson.
That transition, just characterising what kind of he stood for, what we can expect when he goes April the 8th.
Well, I think what we're seeing now is a lot of good news being priced into dollar yen and the yen crosses as well. And I think probably the next leg up for the pair into the 100 mark, if it doesn't come in 2013, I think it would come into 2014. I think the next leg up will probably start when Mr. Shirakawa steps down, and there's a number of people who have been touted. I've seen about 4 really key front runners. All of them are up for radical measures and are very much aligned with Mr. Abe's thinking. Given the split that they've had with the landslide victory in the lower house, there will be an upper house election, I think in July, around about July time. If they win that, if the LDP party win that, they'll have full control of the diet, which means, you know, really good things. They can push through any kind of measures they like. But I think the next leg up now is once we get this meeting out of the way, and I can't remember a Bank of Japan meeting where there's so many people looking at this, is once this is out, we get the news, we find out they're going to get their 2% inflation target. We'll find out what sort of time frame they're going to be looking to achieve that, whether it's near term that we talked about this morning or whether it's going to be medium term. But I think, you know, there's going to be other measures imposed. Obviously, the 10 trillion has been widely talked about. That's largely discounted. Other things like extending the maturities on JGB yields, on sort of duration there, and cutting the interest rate as well. So there's other things that come out. But I think the next leg up will be, the big leg up will be when Mr. Shirakawa steps down. The Conservative head of the Bank of Japan will step down, and they'll replace him with someone who's going to be a lot more radical and really a lot more achieving of this 2% threshold that they need. So I think longer term, I'm still a big dollar yen bull. Especially we'll need to see data in the US come out a lot stronger than it is at the moment and yields to move up. But I think the next leg up will come up when Mr. Shirakawa steps down and probably replaced by a guy called Mr. Mutu there.
Chris, at the moment, the Nikkei is just holding very steady. It's hardly moving, in fact. And yet our own market is actually up by 0.5%. Is this in response to kind of, well, is it pricing any kind of expectations, or how are you reading actually our first hour of trading with all of that in mind?
Well, I think it's part of down to what we just saw with that previous press conference. Investor confidence is low, and I think, you know, we're climbing this wall of worry, and I think that's the situation now, is that people don't want to be missing out. I mean, if you look at other risk assets at the moment, the euro's pushed back down to 133. We're seeing dollar yen coming off a little bit at the moment. US futures are unchanged, and like you say, our market has taken that 4,800 handle quite easily. So, you know, I think there does seem to be this move up. Of course, McMahon's putting some points in, Fortescue as well. And I think we're just seeing a little bit of money flowing into the banks. There's some money flowing into the heavyweights, BHP and Rio, ahead of numbers this week as well. So I think it's quite interesting to see the breakdown, not just in correlations between the currency markets, but our market moving up. And very testament to what we're seeing in some of the European markets as well. We saw the FTSE claim the highest level last night since 2008. The DAX not far off, and I think the CAC's there as well. So clearly, you know, there's markets are pushing higher. There's clear momentum in the equity trade at the moment, and you know, I think it's very, very bullish indeed.
Yeah, HSBC Private Banks are telling its clients to buy riskier assets. On that score, just walk us through the NAB, you know, just because you've been in the UK, you've got a feel for that economy close up. How's it all playing out?
In terms of the NAB, I didn't go. I never actually made it as far as you know, outside of you know, North London, to be honest, Carson. So I couldn't really explain that, considering as NAB make, in terms of the commercial real estate, which is reduced to Clydesdale and Yorkshire, they do make 50% of their earnings or losses, should we say, considering this, I think that last year they lost between them about 213 million. They make them from the Midlands and up north as well. So I think what's interesting as well in terms of housing, and housing got decimated up in the north of England last year, is that business confidence in northwest and northeast England now is actually probably the highest in England in terms of manufacturing and services as well. So that's very, very good for the, or say, you know, certainly shows green shoots developing here, and property prices are starting to pick up in the north of England, which is obviously good for lending as well. But I think in London it's a very different dynamic. There was no real huge sell-off during the GFC in London property prices. But now we've got to a situation, I'm sure a lot of people read this Sydney Morning Herald article, the Age article yesterday, where they talked about housing affordability, not just here in Australia, but in London actually now being 8.5 times incomes. And when there's jobs still being heavily lost in property and finance as well, it's just, to me, it seems that property prices are just either going to stagnate or go backwards there as well. And I'm hearing that you have to have 25% deposits there. So clearly, you know, in terms of London, I can't see credit growth picking up anywhere at all, if not going backwards. But I think in the north of England, where Clydesdale and Yorkshire have, I think it's better times and certainly bodes slightly better for NAB longer term.
You just wonder how much cashed up Greeks have contributed to that thematic of London soaring property prices, just putting fresh bids into play, leaving everyone else out in the cold. And it is very, very, very cold there, is it not, Chris?
Indeed.
Welcome back to the warmth. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.
All right. Pretty chilly stateside.